Mr. Black.
Yeah.
Hit me up with the sound of the Power Rangers fucking up their Megazord transformation.
It's morphin' time. Shit, that looks like ass. That's all I got.
For streaming and everything, like I said, what kind of built into it. Obviously that's how I met Jeff, was probably one of the first times I got over 8 viewers, after you foregated me in the back of my main on Metalopolis.
I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. It's one of the oldest videos I think I actually still have on my YouTube is of that game. And yeah, you put a pylon in the smoke.
In the smoke in the back, in the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Destroyed me. And I think I had like 200 viewers. I completely lost my shit. And I met a lot of great people that way. PanicSwitched, how I met you, NovaWar. And then I got a little bit more interested in things, obviously. Things started to pick up for me. I was able to kind of break out of that. At the time, when I was getting into StarCraft 2, it was the biggest game on Twitch. Everybody streamed it. If you wanted to stream, that was what you played. And there were guys like Idra, Destiny breaking 10,000 viewers every single day. So for me, being able to get out of the very small part at the bottom was a pretty big deal for me. So, you know, everything kind of naturally progressed. I guess things really took off after that again when the IPL caster search competition came up. And I made it to Vegas to cast the event, and that was supposed to be where my career would start. I was supposed to do a bunch of other events, and that company went bankrupt, so they totally shit the bed. And I just started doing online casts, and my life got so crazy because this was the part where I was really starting to commit a lot of time into streaming, into StarCraft, and I didn't come from a very well-off family. I was already working a PC repair job at my college, and I worked on an environmental protection board thing that paid some of my tuition, and that wasn't enough for to cover my shit. So I had to basically give it up because I couldn't get the support that I needed to do that. And I just said, you know, I'm just gonna go balls deep on this StarCraft thing and see what comes of it. And that was how the whole casting thing started, and just doing that nonstop. So for me, it has a very big emotional part because it was my escape from a life that was getting pretty shitty around the time where I was committing to this stuff, because I couldn't keep doing what I wanted to do, and I felt, you know, I have a passion for this. This is where I want to go, and it gave me some of the best years of my life for sure.
David Kim's gone off StarCraft 2 now. What does that tell you? Does that tell you that they're giving up on StarCraft 2? They're kind of passing the torch. They're moving on to bigger and better things. Do they have full faith in this? What are your thoughts, man? There's so many different angles, right?
First things first, Brutal Remastered. It's for Korea. You know, they're updating the game to run in a modern setup, but just the way that they want to split things, and I don't see it doing very well outside of Korea. Like when I talk about the mechanics, you know, I'm like, look, I know that the biggest failure of StarCraft 2 as far as like how the game went, like the game itself was like, StarCraft 2 wasn't the worst thing ever when it came out. It was fun, good competitive RTS. There's still a lot of people that play it, but Blizzard completely neglected the casual base. The casuals basically told get fucked like the entire time. It's like, well, you know, fix the custom system. No, it took like 6 years, and it's still not what everybody has been asking for, which is just a server browser that you can title whatever you want, which Overwatch already has. But I could rant about that forever. But the dismissiveness towards players who don't find enjoyment in grinding 8 hours a day is a huge blow. And StarCraft Brood War, whether remastered or not, is not going to cater to those people. There are so many new features for games that have come out that this game does not have. Yeah. When you tell a unit to go somewhere, sometimes it just won't. Sometimes nope, just things just don't happen.
Make it there. Might not make it there.
And I can see this from a different perspective where I'm like, I like the old Resident Evil setup, right? You know, I like the shitty tank controls and not being able to see what's directly in front of me at all times, right? But I know that that's not really where you go as far as like it's not a greater good sort of thing. It's a nostalgia thing that you think back on. You're like, yeah, I liked this, you know, a long time ago, and this brings back memories and feelings, but it's not what I want to commit to forever. So At least on the Brood War side of things, I do see it being, it's probably going to sell really well. There's probably going to be a lot of people that never got into it that'll play the campaign.
Yep.
But, you know, everything else is just quality of life for Korea to continue their competitive scene.
I'm more of like a bandwagon community guy, right? I hop when I know that I have overstayed my welcome and my worth is no longer, or my value there is no longer where I want it to be, or if I'm not having fun anymore. And, you know, usually I go on stints for a year, year and a half, 2 years with a certain game. And then I always dabble with other games just to get that audience knowing that I do play other games, and eventually I will stop playing said game and I will move on to other games, because that is the reality of longevity in this industry. If you stay with one game for too long, you're fucked. And the only way that you're not fucked is if you are of such a huge core fan base, like Adam said, that will support the shit out of you, that you can stay there for a few years and live off the support of your fans. Which is great if you've got that. That's phenomenal. But in order to get that core, you still have to go and play games that are growing and that are big.
I'll play StarCraft and I'll play something else, but the problems behind it, you know, I'll finish my stream and I'll go hang out with Julie. I'll just be like, you know, we'll go for a walk. I just didn't have fun today. You know, I played StarCraft for 5 hours, and you know, some games were okay, games were all right. I went to 2,000 viewers. It was great, right? Got a couple subs, like people in chat said whatever, no big deal. And then I'll go and like, you know, and then I played a couple games of H1Z1, played with one of my friends or solo, and I had such a good fucking time. And 75% of people leave, and I'm like, you can't. I'm like, it's the most difficult thing. It's like, I am having a better time. I'm definitely being funnier because I'm feeling better. I'm more relaxed. I'm not as stressed. The game itself just lets me talk to my stream more. And obviously, you know, as you're saying, like, the way the core audience works, most people don't give a shit. They're like, this isn't what I want to see. Fuck off. And for me, that's the toughest part right now, is because I need that. Because I passed the point of I should have gotten into something else more seriously. And I've dabbled in other stuff from time to time. I would have periods where I would play a lot of other stuff, and then something would pull me back to StarCraft, whether it was a tournament or some patch. And at least for me, I feel like I'm at the point where I've more than overstayed my welcome in terms of just doing that, because my content for StarCraft is slowly getting worse. You know, people can tell that I don't enjoy it as much, and there's still a lot of people that will watch it regardless of whatever. The same people that won't watch anything else, and then there's my dedicated fans that do watch everything else. And the thing is, through all of that I've noticed is, fuck, at this point, I've been doing so much other stuff now. A lot of my most dedicated fans, people who actually, you know, the big donators, the longtime subs, they don't even show up in my chat until I'm playing something else.
Yep.
Because they notice it too. Yep. And they're like, yeah, well, the stream is much better when you're playing something else. Like, I'm gonna stream until I reach whatever the cutoff area is of Persona 5 this weekend, and I know my viewership's gonna be super shit. I'll be happy if I break 200 viewers. I was stoked that I had like over 200 playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that was like the first time I'd done a stream with no StarCraft in it in maybe like 2 or 3 years, right? And I know that the chat is going to be great. There's going to be a lot of people super happy, and the people that really like watching what I do are going to be there.
If you could play a game like Persona 5 or a game like H1Z1 or whatever it is that you want to play, and you were guaranteed the same amount of viewers or just maybe 20, 30% less, would you be done with StarCraft? Would you just jump?
Yeah. Until something big came. I mean, if
no hesitation.
Yeah.
If something big came out, you know, the thing is, I've started to understand this, and it's currently, you know, every day I think about this move I'm gonna make when my lease is up in July, because I don't know what it costs to live. I know Panic. I know you live in New York, so you know that rent can be expensive, but rent is fucking expensive in Los Angeles. This place was
no joke
super
either,
nice. Well, when I was like getting a lot of work, you know, doing WCS and shit, nothing was tough. It was great. Everything's on easy street. If I needed to take a day off, if I wanted to take 2 days off to just chill and do nothing, and then I could go back to StarCraft with a fresh thing, you know, that was totally doable. It was totally fine. But I cannot wait to move somewhere cheaper so that I can say to myself, I'm not having fun playing this game. I want to take a week off and I just want to play something else.
The hardest hurdle you're ever going to have as a streamer, short of the amount of hours that you're putting in, but that's related to this, is looking at your view count. You look over and you're going to see when you first start 0 people or like 3 people. And one of them is Nightbot, and you've like nobody fucking talking in your chat, and it's just the struggle is so real. And because, you know, despite the fact that you're playing something that you might like or whatever, the most gratifying part is knowing that there are people out there that want to consume the content that you're creating. So that part was gratifying to me, but that didn't outweigh me waking up and going, shit, I need to play Hearthstone for 12 hours today, and I really don't want to play Hearthstone for 12 hours today because Zulok sucks, and I like to play Druid, and I don't want to play Zulok for 12 hours just to be like everybody else. In my opinion, hardest thing to do on Twitch is be a variety caster.
Oh, yeah.
Modding
Especially when you
Skyrim.
don't have huge
Modding Skyrim.
views, right?
Unless you're Lyric or somebody
exactly.
who's already enormous and game hopping, you shoot yourself in the foot each and every time you start a new game. And I was super lucky because we had LAGTV as a Kickstarter for our streaming careers, right? So even after all these years, I still have a very specific core of people that will watch me play anything, but my growth is pretty much, you know, it's flatlined. It doesn't go north, it doesn't really go south, it's just there. So even though I get to play different games that I like for like what Nate just said, is I just want to move to a place that's cheaper so that I can play, you know, Hatoful Boyfriend for, you know, 6-7 hours and just
That's the pigeon
love
game,
my
right?
life.
That's the fucking
That's
pigeon,
the pigeon
game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to play Hello Kitty Island Adventure and not have anybody judge me like that shit, which is great. But what I'm going to say is that I hope that, like Jeff does, for example, with RuneScape now and League before that and everything that he's done, is that I hope that you do find something that you can make your main game as a platform. And I say this because as nice as it is to be able to play whatever you want, as a variety caster, I now equally hate the fuck out of everything. If you have a main game that, even though you might wake up in the morning and say to yourself, I really don't want to play this for the next 6 to 7 hours before I switch games, the beauty of having a main game like that is that it still kind of keeps this feeling like a job, so that when you switch to a game that you want to play, you still enjoy yourself as if you were playing it casually.
Yeah, we're already making 3 G's a month, baby. We're already making that dirty esports money.
I know.
Once we get to that 5 G's, bro, you're gonna be able to move up in house. Let's go.
I'm putting leather seats in my Toyota. Let's go. But I am a big Persona fan, right? Like that, like Persona. I'm not the biggest Persona fan, but I'm a pretty big fan. And this whole thing has annoyed me, not just because I wanted to stream it, but just because even if you took out of the fact that I want to be able to stream it, it doesn't make any sense. Like there's no angle you can attack this at where the logic they're trying to use makes any sense, because they're using logic based on information that doesn't exist.
And the worst part about this, at least, you know, from my perspective as Mr., you know, wanting to stream other games, do other stuff, is I'm not the guy that's making big money off this game. I just want to play it and enjoy it with my viewers. You know, it affects everybody. This isn't just like, oh, you know, they didn't say, hey, big channels are probably the ones that are going to be targeted by this. They're like, no, completely across the board. And back to what you said about the Twitch support thing, Twitch didn't come out and say anything useful at all. Like, they're like, oh, hey, people could get DMCA'd if they restream the Power Rangers marathon, but they're like, you'd probably be okay as long as you don't put the VODs up for it. You know, there's no condition like that given for the Persona scenario. So you're like, well, how strict are they going to be? I've been trying to see if anybody had actually been in trouble with this. Obviously, I don't want to be spoiled because I do intend to play the game myself, but the lack of information about it is ridiculous, and just the way that it's being handled it's just disgusting.
But just
that's
the
one of the
logic,
things, though,
just the
from, like-
logic. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, from like a legal perspective, especially from the content side, like Atlas is actually 100% well within their rights to kind of put any kind of restrictions they want. Now, it's
Of course.
stupid that they're enforcing it this way because, yeah, it's free publicity. It's a good way to get the game out there. It's kind of what the current marketing norm is, influencer marketing, getting streamers out playing, getting people in. And for the people who can't necessarily, they want to see the game more before, this is the show. But, Atlas, for some reason, Atlas Japan, kind of similar to Nintendo, it might be a cultural thing where they don't see it like that, and they're just like, we made this game. You're either going to play it on our terms, unspoiled, or that you're not going to get to experience it. But unfortunately, it's not really something that Twitch can really deal with, or YouTube. They're bound by law there. So I kind of don't agree with bashing on Twitch too much. Yeah, they might have been able to publicize it more.
I'm not bashing on Twitch for enforcing it.
It's how they handle it.
cool.
He's not happy with it.
A real statement would have been
not-
nice.
I'm not
Real
I'm not
statement probably
happy
fair,
about
yeah.
how I'm not happy about how we used to get an email that outlined Twitch's specific stance on it. I understand now, somebody who's been in the business for 6 years, I understand that DMCA is above Twitch. Exactly, that's obvious, an obvious thing.
Yeah.
But that's not everybody involved in the game. And Twitch used to post stuff about, what will happen here for this specific game, because think about how often this has happened. Outside of embargoes, which is a standard, thing in the industry to begin with, outside of that, how many games have had this treatment? I can think of one other time. I can't even remember the game, but I can think of one other time that I ever actually had to get directly messaged from Twitch for them to say, guys, you can't, there are serious guidelines for this, and we have to enforce them as a company, because this never friggin' happens. They have Forza running 4K 60 native with 4K assets.
Can TVs handle 4K 60? A lot of or HDMI, even on that spec, a lot of them have trouble at 4K 60.
2.0
if they have
is
HDMI 2.0.
Yep.
But if you turn on
that's where
HDR, it drops to 4K 30.
No,
This
it'll
is a
still
lot
be
of data to
4K.
push.
It'll still be there. No. It's
No,
still
mine's
like by
at
the
least
time.
the LG.
By
LG
the time,
pushes down to 4K 30.
yeah, I mean the problem with HDR and 4K 60 and everything is, with HDR it obviously takes a shitload of bandwidth. But by the time Scorpio comes around, it'll be future proof to the point where you plug it into a TV that can do it. It's going to output 4K 60 HDR, right? I mean, you're going to be limited to your TV ultimately, and HDR is still and 4K content is still in a really shitty new age transition mode, especially the HDR stuff. So that's gonna take some time to hit, but they'll hit an HDMI spec that does that for sure. But the thing that really impressed me, and I'll say this before I passed off to you guys for your thoughts, was that it's fully backwards compatible with the 360, the Xbox One, the entire catalog, fully backwards compatible, and it upscales internally, not putting it on the developers. So this isn't a PS4 Pro thing where the developers have to worry about it. The console itself at a system level will upscale everything to 4K. That's fucking crazy. That's big. I don't think people realize how insane that is for a piece of hardware to do that for a console, and to do it, without the devs having to have their hands tied up in it, which is part of PS4 Pro's problem right now.
That's not as crazy as you make it sound from a hardware perspective. It's actually a little bit of an expensive piece of hardware to put in. But if you think about it, they're in a weird spot though. If you think about it compared to PlayStation, for example, Sony's always been kind of the custom hardware guru, and they've been kind of moving more towards the middle where they want to do more generic hardware. And you can kind of see that out of the gate, PS4 just trounced Xbox One in terms of spec, and then the PS4 Pro, you can kind of see they realize we actually need a little bit more hardware. So they kind of went with an incremental update, but Xbox was like, we can't go incremental. We need to go big. And that's what we're seeing with Scorpio. But again, all of them went with the AMD style architecture, and that's kind of where they're getting their gains now. The backwards compatibility kind of comes in from AMD and using their tech again. You know, they're not like changing the core counts, so you know all of that stays the same from a hardware perspective. They're pretty much saying we're just going to throw more GPU resources at it, more RAM, and more general bandwidth. So they're just speeding up things that give you more performance, and then it's not terribly difficult for them to just build in an upscaler piece of hardware that else, you know,
it's not that it's difficult.
It's still awesome though.
It's the fact that it's there.
They're doing it. They're doing it.
They're doing it. It's not. I didn't say that it was gymnastics, and they didn't even need to, because I mean, what? It's not the PS4 Pro doesn't do that, Panic. The PS4 Pro puts all that shit on the devs. So,
but they need to. Yeah, but Microsoft needs to catch up at this point.
That's not playing catch up. That's passing them, like dramatically passing them. Think about it as a developer
and specs, but in terms of mind share, they have to have something like this to be like, oh yeah, no, you can play all of your old games, because they lost a lot of people. Like, I sold all my Xbox stuff to get a PS4. You know, they lost a lot of mind share from the community.
But that wasn't backwards compatibility. That wasn't upscalability. That was just games, which is going to be their ultimate problem anyways. No matter how good the hardware is, they're going to need to have games. But I don't think there were people out there going, man, fuck, this Xbox One just doesn't have the backwards, you know, the compatibility or the
hardware kind of sucked too.
Graphic capability. Yeah, but for console people playing Xbox, nobody was sitting there going, oh, I need an extra 50p out of this, you know, I want to go from 900 to 950 for Call of Duty. Nah. Like, nobody was fucking saying that shit.
Nah.
The approach will not be easy. You're required to maneuver straight down the stretch and skim the surface to this point. The target area is only 2 meters wide. It's a small thermal exhaust port right below the main port.